Introduce the moderator for this morning's panel, Brigadier General Retired Paul Fredenberg, Executive Vice President for Defense and National Security at AFCEA International. Paul joined AFCEA in August of 2021, following a 32-year career in the Army, in infantry, and as a signal officer. His final assignment was the Deputy Commander of the Joint Force Headquarters, Department of Defense Information Networks. As Executive Vice President for Defense and National Security, he provides oversight and strategic direction to AFCEA's programs supporting DoD, DHS, and other government agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming my boss, General Paul Fredenberg, to the stage.
Hey, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. You still got a job. That's good. Hey, everybody, welcome. And if there's some seats in the house, there's some up front here. If you're standing in the back, come on forward. I know you're going to want to hear what these ladies and gentlemen have to say. Welcome this morning to our panel, A View from the Service Cyber Component Commands. This is the first time we've done this panel, and I'm very excited to have all of these individuals up here talking about their mission today. And I hope everyone had a chance this morning to hear General Nakasone in the opening keynote. We're going to continue that conversation right up here because a lot of the things that he talked about are going to be enabled and executed by the cyber component commands here. Let me give you a brief explanation about how we're going to run the panel today. We have 1 hour, and that's going to go by very quickly, I'm sure. I'm going to introduce each of the members very briefly and allow them a brief kind of stage-setting remarks if they wish. And then I have a few primer questions. But the most important part of today is your audience questions. And so I think they put out earlier, think about your questions, email them to askme@tncyber@gmail.com. They'll go to the back of the room, and the big voice of God will present us questions when we come there. So please, if you have any questions along the way, email them to that email address. And then, so without further ado, let me go ahead and get started. I'm just going to go in order here. But we have the distinct pleasure of having Lieutenant General Maria Barrett with us today. She's the Commanding General of U.S. Army Cyber Command. She is a Massachusetts native and a long time, and I don't like to say this, but a New England Patriots fan, and I question her judgment in her sports fans. But I've been dealing with this for several years, so it's okay. She was commissioned after graduating from Tufts University with a bachelor's degree in international relations, and she has served and commanded at every level. Her most recent assignments include the commander of U.S. Army Network Enterprise Technology Command, Deputy Director Current Operations J3, United States Army Cyber Command, Deputy Commanding General Joint Forces Headquarters Cyber, R-Cyber, and Deputy Commander Operations Cyber National Mission Force. So she has been busy for the last few years, let me tell you. She's earned a master's degree from the premier college, Industrial College of the Armed Forces, the premier Joint Service School, and has a telecommunications management from Webster's University. Maria, over to you.
Thanks, Paul. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to get to the chase and take a refrain from the Brady Bunch, Marsha, except it's going to be data, data, data. So as you see the Department of Defense and all of the services moving towards how to operationalize data in their warfighting, we really need to start thinking about how you underpin all of that data. And it really gets down to building a data fabric that will support these types of exchanges. So one of the things that I hope we are talking about during the next couple of days is how do you secure that data? How do you build this fabric really to operate and enable all of that decision making that is going, the desire to get after data-driven decisions? And if you're not thinking about the security of this from the beginning, when you're doing your development of the software that underpins this to the deployment, where is it going to go in this environment? And then how are you going to sustain this and operate this from end to end? We're going to really put at risk that commander's decision dominance. And so I hope the discussions that we're having over the next couple of days here really get to the core of some of these things, because they're absolutely vital for where the Department of Defense and the Army wants to go.
Thank you. Thank you. We're also honored to have Ms. Angela Carter here today, Deputy to the Commander, Joint Force Headquarters, Cyber Navy. So thank you for being here today, Angela. She's also the Senior Cryptologic Advisor. She works hand in hand across the interagency to integrate, coordinate, and execute cyberspace operations at the direction of U.S. Cyber Command. She's responsible for daily operational management of functions necessary to enable complex global cyber operations and information operations on behalf of the Commander, Joint Force Headquarters, Cyber Navy. She graduated from Johns Hopkins, has a master's degree in technical management, and holds a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science from the University of Maryland. Prior to this position, she served for many years in a variety of government roles and has extensive knowledge and depth of experience in cybersecurity and signals intelligence. Over to you, Angela.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to participate today. I'm here as a representative for Vice Admiral Clapperton, for Vice Admiral Clapperton and the members of Fleet Cyber Command. Fleet Cyber Command as a force is actually focused on delivering and providing three things to the fight: assured command and control, battle space and space domain awareness, and cyber effects. Assured command and control includes encryption, securing our communication infrastructure, redundancy of systems, and cybersecurity. Oh, thank you. Our ability to communicate securely is integral to us being able to fight, as well as our command and control systems are integral. We need to be able to ensure that those systems are secure, robust, and redundant. The second area of focus that we're focused on is battle space and space domain awareness. We're leveraging our cyber and space capabilities in order to enhance our understanding of the physical battlefield. The third area is cyber effects, and those include offensive and defensive capabilities that we will use to impact our adversary. In order to deliver these capabilities, Fleet Cyber Command needs innovation and partnerships. We need creative solutions that easily integrate into our systems, networks, and operations. However, we also need to be sure that that cybersecurity is built into all areas of collaboration. It's critical that we're operating in a secure, assured environment. By putting together our talented members along with the brightest minds from industry, academia, and across the DoD and IC, we can achieve our full potential to identify and mitigate threats, but also to enable operations. Thank you.
And next, we have Lieutenant General Kevin Kennedy. He's the Commander, 16th Air Force. You may have the most hats of everybody here on the stage. Commander, 16th Air Force, Commander, Air Forces Cyber, Commander, Joint Force Headquarters, Cyber Air Force. He's responsible for more than 49,000 personnel conducting worldwide cyber operations. He leads the global information warfare activities spanning cyberspace, information operations, electronic warfare, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and targeting. He's a command pilot with more than 3,400 flying hours in the B-1 and the T-38, including combat over Afghanistan, and his staff experience includes services on the U.S. Air Force Headquarters Staff, Joint Chiefs of Staff, United States Cyber Command, and the Office of the Secretary of Defense. A graduate from the U.S. Air Force Academy. Sir, floor is yours.
Thanks, Paul. And also a New England Patriots fan.
Oh, no.
All right. I knew I liked Maria, and I like you too, Angie. We're willing to have you on the bus. All right. Paul, thanks for letting me be here today and join on the panel. I just want to kind of kick things off with a few of the priorities that we're focused on at 16th Air Force. As you were listening to the boss earlier, he talked about focus, alignment, and readiness. And readiness is our number one priority within Air Force's cyber, Joint Force Headquarters Cyber, and 16th Air Force. And when we're talking about readiness, the big question we should all ask ourselves is ready for what? And the answer is pretty simple. Ready to face the pure challenge that we have in the PRC and to meet the acute threat that we see unfolding right now in Eastern Europe from Russia. We have to train, build capability, develop doctrine to make sure that we can take care of those two things that are on our plate. The next one is strengthen resilience across our force. This is resilience of our airmen as well as resilience of our systems. And as General Barrett was talking, this isn't just about pace planning of our systems. This is about the data requirements to execute our mission. And how do we get those in a disconnected, isolated, limited bandwidth environment that we think we're going to be fighting in the Pacific, and thinking through that problem. The next one is all focused on results, and inside the results there's kind of three things. The first one is maturing information warfare. The United States Air Force made a decision to pull 49,000 airmen together into one command to make sure that we could leverage the talents and capabilities of our ISR enterprise, our cyber enterprise, our EW enterprise, our IO enterprise, and our weather enterprise. The majority of those enterprises, either wholly or the vast majority of the airmen that participate, live within 16th Air Force. And so the idea is, how do we bring those capabilities to bear, primarily in a competition framework, but also available for crisis and conflict to support the other CFACs and JFACs across the globe that support the other combatant commands. The next one is driving modernization. This is twofold: modernization of our capabilities. A lot of what we'll talk about here on this floor is aimed toward that, but also modernization of our processes of how we support our airmen that are at the tactical edge and have to execute the mission. And finally, it's all about increasing the combat effectiveness of our force. Across our force in 16th Air Force, make sure that we're ready to produce effects directly or in support of the effects producing capability that's at the tactical edge. If we're doing something within the command that's not aligned toward that, then we're missing the mark. So looking forward to your questions and having a robust conversation today. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. And our next contestant is Major General Joseph A. or J. Matos. He's the Deputy Commander, Marine Corps Forces Cyberspace Command, then the Deputy Commander, Marine Forces Space Command, and the Deputy Commander, Joint Force Headquarters Cyber Marines. He's held several operating force assignments of increasing responsibility, including G6 Operations Officer for 2nd Marine Division, and also as the Deputy G6 for 2MEF Forward during 2 separate OAF rotations. He commanded the 7th Communications Battalion and commanded the Defense Information Systems Agency Pacific. He's been a long time battle buddy of mine, and our paths have crossed several times. His most recent staff assignments include Deputy Director, Command Control, Communications, and Computer Systems for Information Technology for the United States Space Command, and the Assistant Deputy Commandant for Information and Director, Information Command Control, Communications, and Computers on the Marine Corps staff. He's a graduate of Virginia Tech and the Naval Postgraduate School at Monterey, and a distinguished graduate from the premier senior service college, the Industrial College of the Armed Forces. Jay, over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate the introduction, and to the AFCEA team for having us up here today. I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak to y'all. As Paul indicated, again, I've been in the Marine Corps 30 plus years, and when I first came in, it was an analog world, right? It was single channel radio, it was analog systems. I was talking to General Kennedy on the walk over here. The first computers just came in, and now everything's ubiquitous. Our computers are now a commodity, data is now a commodity, and how we do that. So I think one of the keys for the senior leaders such as us is to set the stage for that next 30 years. What's this the cyberspace world going to look like 30 years from now? Because I know the radical changes that we've gone through in just the time that I've been in. Really excited to see where we'll be in the future. Talking about MARFOR Cyber, again, 5 hats there, 5 commands underneath the General Heritage, and working for him. First is the Joint Force Headquarters Cyber. Again, they do cyberspace operations in support of United States Cyber Command. We also set up a new Marine Corps Information Command that just stood up in December. And again, that's the synthesis of the space, the information, the cyber, the data, the synthesization of that data for internal to the United States Marine Corps. It's a service cyber component within there to service all the components, or I'm sorry, all the elements of the MAGTF. Also, Deputy Commander, Space Command, so would directly responsible to General Dickinson out at U.S. Space Command. We are the Marine service component to Space Command. We're also the service cyber component. Service cryptologic component to General Nakasone in the role of ensuring that our cryptologic requirements are met. And finally, and I think obviously the supporting element to General Berger, the Commandant, supporting, operating, defending the Marine Corps Enterprise Network and making sure it's extended out, ready and available at any time and place. The 4 priorities we have, assured C2, I think it goes without saying, making sure that network is available whenever, wherever Marines need it at a moment's notice. It is defended against all manner of threats coming towards it. The information maneuver, I think that's another big piece that as we've learned, the information environment is a tremendously, it's changing, it's rapidly moving, and it's a very challenging area to move in. But how do we support that as the Marine Corps? How do we support the information maneuver, not just the data, but the support that the information needs within the Marine Corps? How do we shape that? How do we move that? And then how do we support the joint force with that? The defense in depth, similarly tied to the assured C2 piece of it, but from the bottom level down at the operator level, all the way up to the where we meet with this at the enterprise at the internet access points. How do we ensure that depth is there? It's not just one stop place at the CSSP, but it's all the way across the spectrum that we support and defend the enterprise. And finally, is the talent management piece. That's the 4th priority. Just making sure we have the quality Marines, we assess them, we train them, we retain them, and we make sure they're ready to do the jobs they're required to do, both for the Marine Corps, but also in support of General Nakasone to that readiness discussion. So I think summing all that piece up, the real big word for us is synchronization. How do we synchronize all the elements of the information environment, be it data, be it cyber, be it space, be it information operations, whatever that case may be. How do we synchronize all that into one element that we can then present to both to the Marine Corps and to the Joint Force? So again, look forward to your questions, and thank you.
Thank you. And our final panelist this morning is Captain Adam Morrison. He's a Deputy Commander for the Coast Guard Cyber Command. He's responsible for supporting the commander's ability to conduct operations and deliver effects in and through cyberspace operational domain. He most recently served as the first commanding officer of the Coast Guard cutter Stone. It's homeported in Charleston, South Carolina. And prior to Stone, Captain Morrison served as the first U.S. Coast Guard attaché assigned to the United States Embassy in Tokyo. He has served on 6 U.S. Coast Guard cutters prior to Stone, and as I understand it, he commanded 3 of those. Captain Morrison is a graduate of the United States Coast Guard Academy, which was the arch rival of my alma mater in football over the years, but I always had a very special place in my heart for our Coast Guard brothers and sisters. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree in government, and he holds a Master in Public Policy degree from Princeton University, the School of Public and International Affairs. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, General. First, I'd like to say thank you to AFCEA. AFCEA has been a great supporter of the U.S. military, and most specifically our military cyber warriors. For the U.S. Coast Guard, many of you in the audience may not be aware of the fact that we are both a Title 10 organization as well as a Title 14 organization. So today, when I respond to the questions, I'll be weaving in that narrative of how we can support in both realms from a law enforcement as well as a military perspective. Coast Guard Cyber Command has 3 lines of effort. Because we're in the military, we have a responsibility to support our portion and defend our portion of the .mil network. Secondarily, line of effort number 2 is, which is probably what many of you in the audience will care about from an industry perspective, is we are responsible for protecting the cyber domain around all U.S. ports as well as internationally. And then third, we operate in and through cyberspace delivering effects. Over to you, General.
Thank you very much. Okay. Just a quick scene setter, which I'm sure you've all read, but the harnessing of the right cyber capabilities is more important than ever. in the domain that's deluged by persistent attacks and simultaneous sophisticated campaigns which threaten the global political, economic, and security interests. Now, within that context and this year's theme, the urgency of action, focused, aligned, and ready, you've all articulated a few of your priorities here. Could you help us understand your top priorities, but more importantly, what are some of the innovative solutions you're pursuing to get after some of your top priorities? And this is be a question for each one of you. I'll just start in order to make it easy so everybody can be prepared when it's your turn. But Lieutenant General Barrett?
So I'm going to come back to General Kennedy's statement about readiness. So that is the top priority. Oh, by the way, there is a Cyber Command and an Army Cyber booth, and they're both hiring. Shameless plug. But I do think it doesn't have to be technically innovative in order to be different. I do think we have to look at how we are doing the recruitment and the onboarding of our personnel and look at it very differently than how the normal process has taken us, because it doesn't work. If it takes you 120 or 140 days to onboard a civilian, that is really, in this day of age of instant gratification, that is not sufficient for today's workforce. And so if you go by there, you will see that we are trying to do things differently and we're going to where the talent is at, whether that's making relationships with academia, thinking about our intern programs differently. We are going to do everything that we can to build and sustain readiness. If we want to get a little bit more technical in that answer, I would say the persistent cyber training environment is the other place I would go. For a lot of you who have been tracking this throughout the years, right, that's not new news. We've known that we were going to be building this, but the teams are out there using it every day for individual training, sustainment, crew training, and mission rehearsal. And I think that is, when you get to see what they're doing, it is phenomenal what they can do and how much that builds in readiness and our preparedness to do our mission. I can't go into the details of all of that, but I would say, if you're thinking about one of the things that we have learned from the wild success of PCTE is we now need to get the content onto the system. And so the teams right now, a good bit of their time is spent developing that content for exercises and their training. I think that's a place where that could really accelerate the use of this really great platform that's building readiness for the force.
So I think from the Fleet Cyber Command perspective, partnerships, I think, is one of our key initiatives, but also ensuring that when we're collaborating across, whether it be academia, industry, DoD, IC, that we're building in cybersecurity to that collaboration. It goes without saying that just cyber hygiene is just not sufficient enough, that we have to think about our security in layers of defenses, constant vigilance, and the ability to respond to these cyber threats. And I think just by partnering with the industry and academia to identify and integrate those capabilities, we just need to make sure that we're considering all the cybersecurity aspects, so we are operating in a secure environment.
Absolutely, critically important.
Okay, I'd like to kind of pull on the thread that General Barrett started with the recruitment and retention aspects of the talent. So first, some aspects. One of the narratives that we have is we're a total force, and the capabilities that we need to own the domain as a member of Cyber Command are resident in the active force, the Guard, and the Reserve. And the idea is, how do we make sure that an airman that comes and serves in our force is able to continue their service as long as possible in one of those components, and whether that's enlisted officer or civilian, and how can we make sure that they are able to contribute as long as they are willing to do so, and not be forced out of a specific construct because the active force model doesn't work for them anymore. Maybe a uniform force model doesn't work for them anymore, but we still have these opportunities. So trying to be more transparent. To get at that, we have an actual initiative with the local cyber wing in San Antonio, 960th, where we're capturing, that sounds adversarial, where we're providing the opportunity to serve, to continue to serve in the 960th as, and we're talking to them on active duty while they're doing that, so we can make that transition to heaven. So this is where we're looking at some of the critical work roles that we have in the environment that we find difficult to retain because they're highly sought after by industry. On-net interactive operators, our exploitation analysts, and so we actually have 5 to 8 airmen is what we're looking at targeting. 6 and 6 is the overall goal, but right now we have about 5 to 8 that are actively doing it. Now that may seem like a small number, but in these critical work roles, that is a real readiness. That is a readiness kind of exponential increase to readiness, because as you know, if the experienced operator or analyst maintains on the teams and in the environment, they pull the rest of the team up. And that's how we get the higher performing teams when we have that longer experience and they can train the new airmen that are coming on board. So that's one of the first ones. The other one is, frankly, modernizing some of the processes to take advantage of the tools that Congress has given us. And so whether it's positional promotions, which are technical positions that maybe a normal promotion path might not have produced an officer of the right rank and skills to serve there, in that position, we're exploring ways in the Air Force to do that. The other one is cyber executive service. We have moved it out, but we are looking to be more aggressive in the Air Force, and we're looking at specific wings right now to how we do that, which helps us cut across a little bit of the bureaucracy that General Barrett was talking about as far as civilian hiring processes. So that's kind of the 2 areas that we're looking. The other one on the recruitment aspect is how do we, as the numbered Air Force level, help the recruiters recruit directly into the force with a pipeline where we take the person from interest to actual on the team and have an organization that does that. So the 67 Cyber Wing is looking at a cell that would actually do that, work with AFPC, work with our recruiters of how do we identify the talent and then help them through the processes, because as we all had to, most of us, those that have served in uniform, it's not the easiest process to get through necessarily as we go forward, but this is the way is that maybe we have someone that stays with them through the entire process from the recruiters get them to the point of entry. We want to get them all the way into our force. And so we're thinking through of how do we partner to do that. So there's a couple of things, innovations that we're looking at in 16th Air Force.
All right, thank you, sir. And again, the Marine Corps is no different than our sister services. Again, getting the readiness piece out there and the challenges we have. Like I said, assessing those Marines, training them, and retaining them, making sure they're ready to go. I'm going to make an assumption, though, is the innovation what we're talking about with the Marine Corps. I'm going to make the assumption that our readiness piece is there. I think General Barrett and General Kennedy have done a great job, discussing the readiness, the challenges, and some of the solutions, and we're closely aligned with them going there. I want to focus on the innovation piece of what we talked about was that Marine Corps Information Command that I discussed earlier. I think previous commander of MAR 4 Cyber, General Glavy, realized that below the MAR 4 level at the Marine Expeditionary Force and below down to battalion, the division level, there was a lack of synchronization of the efforts in the cyberspace world, whether that be space, whether that be information operations, whether that be cyberspace operations or DODN operations. How do we synchronize them? And everybody would come up in their separate silos, and they would hit a glass ceiling kind of as you try to get beyond the service level to get to some of the authorities or get to some of the capabilities that resided beyond the Marine Corps, beyond such as intelligence capability at Fort Meade or cyber operations at Cyber Command. They kind of hit a glass wall of figuring out who to go to, how to get those authorities pushed down, how to synchronize those efforts. So the genesis of the Marine Corps Information Command to tie all these elements together is to address that concern, is to be that integration point between the forces below the tactical edge who have these requirements to operate in a rapidly changing environment, but also tie that to we know who to talk to at Marine Corps Information Command, knows who to talk to at Cyber Command or NSA or at Space Command. So again, to be able to be that touch point between the two organizations so that you don't have to have an infantry battalion going all the way to United States Space Command. That's the Marine Corps Information Command's responsibility to be that integration element. So again, we just stood that up in of December of this past year, December 2022. It was stood up and operating. And we have now taken these first steps. We've run the first iteration out at Balakatan, exercise out in the Philippines, which just ended up. We're continually putting detachments out forward with this Marine Corps Information Command detachments out forward with these teams to, as the Tactical Edge or the MAGTAFs, Marine Air Ground Task Force, are operating, and they have questions about operating this environment. Again, we have embeds down there at those organizations from the MCIC to be that guidepost to them to identify solutions, to break through any walls that may be there. They may be run into incorporating those assets. So I think as we operate in this rapidly changing cyberspace world, that Marine Corps Information Command is going to be a tremendous benefit to the MAGTF, but also to the joint world and the intelligence and cyber world. So with that.
Thank you, General. So I'm going to throw out a couple quick metrics for you. 361 ports, and through those 361 ports, $5.4 trillion of economic engine for the United States flows in and out on a yearly basis. We support those 361 ports with a cyber workforce underneath Admiral Van of 650 people. Now compare that to what General Kennedy said just a few minutes ago. Okay? Quite the distinct difference, right? So how do we compensate for that? In terms of our innovative effort, we've created an auxiliary workforce. Every single person sitting in front of me or standing in the back can serve in the Coast Guard Auxiliary. We stood this unit up April 21st. It's a volunteer workforce of men and women who just love the Coast Guard and love the missions that the Coast Guard supports around the United States. This auxiliary workforce is agnostic of whether you're coming from industry or in the military. So even the generals sitting out in the audience in front of me can serve in the Coast Guard Auxiliary. So we're taking all those members and kind of multiplying our workforce to buy down risk in our ports. We're assigning at least one auxiliarist in every single port of our major ports, and we also have a Coast Guard reservist assigned to every single port. Over to you, General.
Thank you. Well, excellent. So I heard a lot of theme: readiness, personnel, capabilities, operations. But one of the things that we always need to do is pay attention to what's going on around us and learn from other operations and other things. So, and I'm going to start down with you, Adam. So no rest for you down there. We're going to go in reverse order. But what lessons are we taking away, or what are we learning from the Ukraine war? Any insights you may have, and how are we applying those lessons to our future operations, our training, our manning, our equipping the force?
Yes, sir. I'm going to rewind the clock. Thank you for that question. I'm going to rewind the clock back to 9/11. So the threats that attacked us on our domestic shorelines and in our major cities started abroad, right? So what the U.S. Coast Guard is doing is we're recognizing that whether it was 9/11 or whether it's the current Russia-Ukraine crisis, the threats abroad can quickly and easily come to the United States shoreline, right? So we're taking advantage of the lessons learned of the Russia-Ukraine crisis to push Coast Guard forces out in a supporting network to our partners and allies to help them buy down risk in their own ports such that we can ensure the safe commerce coming to and from the United States. Over to you, General.
I think the key that we're... Yep. I think one of the key lessons learned here is just the ability to share partnerships with not just with the Ukrainians ourselves, between the U.S. and Ukrainians, but other partners within the world sphere. And again, we talk a lot about sharing of kinetic means or materials and supplies, but it also applies to the cyberspace world as well. There's a lot of intelligence being collected, a lot can be shared, but I think that the partnerships that we're developing to share intelligence, to share capabilities, to share defense, not just with nation states, but also with corporates or corporate partners to gather that intelligence to react against what the adversary may be doing or maybe decide to bring into the future, I think is one of the key things that we're learning to take away from this fight.
Okay. To kind of build on that information, I think there's a couple of things that resonate. And for those that aren't tracking, so AFCyber JFHQC Air Force supports EUCOM directly on behalf of General Nakasone. So there are forces across all of our components that actually are engaged in the theater, but we are the ones responsible for being that single voice of the command and help providing a unity of effort across the U.S. Cyber Command support. And I get a lot of help on that. But as we're moving forward, the power of information. And if you think back into about a year and a half ago, of the power of information of being able to build a coalition. I mean, I think we can't, that is one of the lessons as we're thinking through as members of the cyber enterprise as well as members of the ISR community in the Air Force, we're thinking through, okay, how do we continue this in a competition and crisis as we saw that play out and now into a conflict in Eastern Europe. So building and maintaining a coalition. The other one is it's very useful to expose adversary intent and disrupting the adversary and what they might want to do with some level of surprise. So I think, again, information sharing and that ability to disrupt. And finally, enabling our partners and allies to defend themselves, whether that's in direct conflict between Ukraine and Russia or whether it's any of our other partners and allies in Europe that are seeing some potential increase in adversary activity on their networks or systems. So I think that's the key. The other portion of that is of how we think about preparing for this and how we are postured and build in resilience to our capabilities and how we set the globe and set the theater to be ready to support combat operations or to deny adversary effects on the battle space. And I think that's the other thing as we're looking forward is how do we posture ourselves to do that? And so the coordination of our defensive forces across the components of Cyber Command was absolutely critical and something that we continue to work very closely with General Skinner and his team at JFHQC Doden, as well as all of the components as we think through about how do we present that capability for across the force, not just in Europe. And we think, Russia is a global actor, and we have to think in other places as well as to make sure our posture was just right. And I'll leave something for General Barrett here before I take all your talking points. All right, over to you, Angie.
So I agree, we've learned a lot with data sharing, but I also think it's not just about the volume of data that we're collecting, it's about how we are looking at that data and understanding that data and enhancing how we are performing our warfighting capabilities, but also we're translating that data into options for our combatant commanders. So I think it's not just about just collecting data, it's about how we're utilizing it and seeing success in how we're analyzing it and sharing it with our partners.
So the data piece, data sharing, resiliency of the networks of partners and allies has already been touched upon. So I'll go in, folks, this is what operating in a contested environment looks like. In Southwest Asia, after two decades of fighting against an adversary that really didn't have much game in the electronic warfare or cyber sphere, this is a different environment. And I do think this has given us some insights into what we need to be developing across the MLPF in order to really enable our warfighters to compete and be ready for conflict if necessary. And so I think it really has been, there's a lot that we've taken away from it.
Lots to learn from this. So we have a lot of industry in our audience here today, and this is going to be my final question. It'll be my final question if you have questions for our panel members. So again, ask me TNCyber at gmail.com, and please get those questions in. Do we have some teed up already? Okay, good. I'm going to ask one more question because I want to make sure that our industry partners have some takeaways here today. General Nakasone is focused on outcomes. And so what my last question will be from a capabilities and technologies standpoint, which ones are driving your cyber operations and what help do you need from industry to make, your future vision a reality? From a capabilities and kind of technology standpoint, how can industry help out here? I'm going to start in the middle this time. So, Kevin.
All right, Paul, you're mixing it up here. So the big part, we can talk about the various technologies that are out there, and we're trying to understand, how we leverage them in the domain. From a DCO perspective, as we're having conversations, if there's something that we can use a technology, such as AI or something like some automatic in a network defense realm, pushing that down the spectrum of training of capabilities. So what I mean by that is industry program office, cybersecurity service provider, whatever service retained type of defensive forces we have in the Air Force. They're called mission defense teams. That's where I want those capabilities to be. As we're thinking about where it requires more interaction with the adversary, that's where I want our cyber protection team force to be integrated in those capabilities as we're going forward. They still need to leverage those tools, but I'm really trying to push the technology to the left to get the training on there and be consistent and develop that base, and the more dynamic nature on the right, and then our responsibility as 16th Air Force is to knit that across. So that's on the kind of networking, how we're thinking through that. On the weapon system portion, where we're thinking about JADC2 and where we're going with in the Air Force version of ABMS, Chief Goldfein used to talk about systems where does it connect, does it share, can I learn, does it learn, that capability. I've added one more as we've seen Russia-Ukraine and does it heal, is it resilient? And how we go forward on that. So it's as we're building these weapon systems, the key that we're really looking is what kind of lightweight sensors do we have out there that we can then use in this environment, because that is where the puck is going to be in the future as our adversaries look to disrupt combat power. Disrupting networks provides some friction and disruption, sure. Disrupting the platforms that are trying to produce the effects on the battle space, I think that will be potentially more impactful in the future as they go forward. And so I think that's the area that we'll have to make sure we're censoring, so we give some awareness to the rest of the Air Force outside of the folks that are purely focused on the cyber domain. And so that's what we're looking for at 16th Air Force.
Jay?
Thank you. Great question. I know it's with industry here. I think it's key that we provide y'all with the requirements we have. I think there's technical solutions that y'all can provide, but that is really what y'all are built to do, right? You have the engineering skills, and we become the utilizer of the technology that you provide to us. I think, but the one area that at least in the Marine Corps, where I think we need help from industry, is just continued the sharing of the knowledge about the technologies out there, i.e. cloud or AI. We all hear about it, we see it, we use it, but we are nowhere near at the skill level that industry has when it comes to operating this technology to the best utilization, defending that capability, whether that's cloud or how we're going to use AI. That's where industry comes in, and the knowledge that y'all can provide us, because our school, the military schooling system is again, as you know, is a long and arduous process, and to change the programs of instruction takes millions of years and thousands of lives to do. So again, but there's opportunity that industry have to teach, to share the knowledge and skills that you have with the service members, and how we do that. We've got some commercial engagement going on with some cloud vendors right now at Mar4 Cyber that is really generating some tremendous results as they sit next to us, and to share the knowledge of, okay, this is how this is how cloud works several layers down, not just at the superficial level, but at a really detailed level, explaining that to our Marines and our civilian Marines to say, okay, this is what you may want to consider. Here's some utilizations both to operate it, to defend it, and then if it comes a point, what are the cyberspace effects that we could potentially we could also do. So I think in those areas, again, AI is still a very nascent technology, I think, for everybody, but it's, again, especially for the military. But how do we incorporate that? And that's where I think we look to industry, is how can you help us understand these capabilities so we can get the most out of it, to utilize to our benefit and to the nation's benefit, both from the offensive side and the defensive side, against our adversaries.
Adam?
I mentioned a couple minutes ago about the impact of the United States Marine Transportation System. Where industry sitting before me can help the Coast Guard out is how we protect and defend that critical infrastructure in our maritime waterways. And so in probably less than 2 months, we will release the second iteration of Coast Guard Cyber Command's Cyber Trends and Insights in the Marine Environment. It's our report to our port partners as well as the industry members as to how we can buy down cyber risks and vulnerabilities in our ports and waterways, how we can improve cyber hygiene. And so we look at that as a collaborative effort between the U.S. Coast Guard, the marine industry, and the cyber industry in an effort to raise the level of standards, buy down risk, and reduce the number of vulnerabilities that could impact our most crucial waterways.
Maria, over to you.
Yeah, I think Jay cheated and looked at my note cards. So everything Jay said about AI and ML, and I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle. What we do is, especially when we get to the networks and what the warfighter wants to do in terms of moving data and enabling those data-driven decisions, it is tremendously complex. Anything we can do to buy down that complexity by leveraging AI and ML would be absolutely fantastic and essential for, I think, the challenges that we face in the future. I think we have the underpinnings of starting to be able to take advantage of it from an Army Cyber Mission standpoint. I mean, we have a big data platform. We have the analytics that we can do at the edge. I think now what we're looking for is where are the applications that can ride this now, and having that engagement in order to fully maximize the big data platform that we do have and the data fabric that we can enable the warfighting with and our own mission. Thanks.
Thank you. And Angela?
I'm going to go to basically agree that we need industry to keep us current on technologies. We know that the adversaries are constantly seeking new capabilities, new attack vectors. It is not good enough for us to actually just match their capabilities. We have to exceed them. So we need industry to get out there and look for new creative solutions for us to use both offensively and defensively. And we need to take advantage of their ability to test that capability out or test out those theories and be able to incorporate them and integrate those into our systems and our networks and operations quickly.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to reach out to the voice of God in the sky here and see what kind of questions we have from the audience.
Thank you, sir. First question, how has the establishment of CNMF as a sub-unified command changed planning and operations for your components?
Who wants to bat at that?
It has not fundamentally changed how mission has been divided up or affected the components as yet. As part of the stand-up of the sub-unified decision for CNMF, they're to come back and talk about the implementation. I think we're not at that stage yet where they have developed or finalized their implementation plan. So from a service component standpoint, I don't have anything specific to say, hey, this is exactly what it's going to look like and how it's going to impact Army Cyber. Ditto.
Yeah, I agree with Maria. I think it has some promise as we look forward to how we organize and how we train airmen that go and assess in the CNMF. I think that's where the promise is, but we're still working through the details.
Again, at this point, there's been no impact to the Marine Corps. I got sharing what General Barrett and General Kennedy said. So I think there is opportunity going forward, and we will be poised to support CNMF and the team there.
From the Coast Guard's perspective, it's been overwhelmingly positive for us, the relationship between Coast Guard Cyber Command and the Cyber National Mission Force. We have embedded approximately 90 personnel inside the CNMF, and we're in lockstep supporting both Title X missions for in defense of the homeland, and we look forward to that partnership growing.
From the Fleet Cyber Command, I agree. I think it's been a great partnership. I think just coordinating opportunities to support our combatant commanders in certain AORs. I think that's been a great partnership with CNMF.
Next question, please.
As Ukraine prepares a major counteroffensive this spring, what are your concerns about the Ukrainian reliance on the Starlink, and what more can the DoD do to improve comms resilience for Ukraine?
I can't share, obviously, details on operational planning, but in general, what I'd offer is that the discussion about information sharing and our relationship, whether it's through the agency or the command, with industry and how we share information in TTPs, what we're seeing about adversaries in the environment is the primary vector that we would explore to ensure, the greatest posture and resilience of any kind of commercial capabilities.
Good. Yeah. Next question.
This one is for General Barrett. How is Army Cyber Command contributing to the service's upcoming data architecture plan, and is it still on track to be delivered in September?
We plug in routinely with the Army's data board, which is where they are developing that plan. So it is on track, and the Army Cyber Technical Warfare Center group, that where my data scientists are, they're the primary means of plugging into that. It's robustly supported with our partners over at the Cyber Center of Excellence, making sure that some of the aspects that they would do, either from a material development side of the house in support of Army Futures Command, or doctrine side of the house, training side of the house, is supported as well. And so I think this offers us the ability to really start to accelerate some of the things we need to do with data, both for the warfighter and to enable some of the foundational things we need to do from a network standpoint, for example, Zero Trust. This body actually is pretty crucial to advancing those things.
Next question.
Sir, we have one more before we go back to you for wrap-up. Historically, most of the focus with securing networks has been from north to south, meaning internal to external. Bad guys are figuring out ways to infiltrate internal networks. So, how do the services plan to gain visibility to the data and traffic that goes east to west across networks? And how important is visibility of these networks in regards to readiness?
Yeah, I'll stab at this because I ended with Zero Trust. So Zero Trust is all about looking at the data. And so it's not just about the human being who logs in as an identity, because at the end of the day, that is a data element. But it's also some of those machine-to-machine interactions, which so far in some of our tools and applications, those interactions where the adversary can hide, those have been largely hidden to us. Let's start getting down to understanding how that software interacts, to seeing it, and then we can start to really defend our networks much better. If we continue to take a look at this from a north-south, east-west, and I'm sorry, Bob Skinner, if you're out there, JRSS perspective, it was a good idea, but I think that we have run its course, and we do really need to get to this piece where we're now starting to think about looking for the anomalous data that occurs in several different aspects of our network in order to identify where the adversary is much sooner, and going back to my AI ML piece, in an automated way. And look, folks, we fly planes on autopilot. We land them on autopilot. This is not scary to run a network in an automated way.
It takes a high degree of skill to land an airplane. Just putting that out there. I agree with what General Barrett said about as far as where we go with the Zero Trust. The other aspects, though, of the technology is as we go towards, the encryption aspect of that as well, is we still have to maintain the access to the data. So there are still boundary defenses that we're going to have. Is kind of this layered approach. We want to protect the data. We want to discover what's happening in the environment. We need to look at sensors to really understand the baseline and kind of get a sense of what's happening in the data and what's transiting our environment. But we also have to make sure the environment's available. So this isn't a zero trust and then we open the boundaries, which that's not what Maria was saying. But that is the kind of the approach the Air Force is taking, is like, okay, we have to have some next generation capabilities at the boundary. We also need to make sure we're getting our encryption modernized. We also need to make sure that we're working on our identity and we're understanding how those flows are working across that entire space. So a lot of opportunity there for innovation and for some of the advanced capabilities, as General Barrett and General Matus and Angie were talking about.
Yeah, with the Marine Corps, again, we continue to work, hand in hand with the DoD CIO and making sure the identity management, making sure the zero trust, following the policy and guidance that DoD CIO is putting out, and next step down is the Department of Navy CIO also. So, again, we're in tune with that. I think one of the challenges we will continue to have, is just the bursting, the plethora of devices out there that generate traffic, and how do you capture, track, and just manage all that? You have planes, you have weapon systems, you have vehicles. They're all generating data. They're all generating information. Now, how do you keep track of all that, and how do you manage all that data? Even with zero trust, that's just an awful lot. And that's something I think all the services will continue to be challenged with, is just managing that east to west flow, because it's just so much out there. You can look at networks, and networks are, we tend to focus on networks, but sometimes it's just those devices that generate the most that we have to manage and watch. With the networks, again, as you go down at the tactical, a lot of desire to have tactical networks that you can stand up, tear down, and move, shoot, move, and communicate. But again, how do we manage those in the broader enterprise, make sure that data is protected also? So that's one of the continuing challenges we have. But I think that's faced by all the services, and we'll continue to partner both with our sister services, but also with industry to find the solutions for that.
Real quick, I'll just add that from a Coast Guard perspective, what we're doing is, as we build out 3 new classes of Coast Guard cutters to serve at sea, we're building it with cyber hygiene in mind first, to protect that north, south, east, west transfer of information. And likewise, we leverage the reciprocity of DoD to buy down our risk in a quicker fashion by leveraging those authorizations that have already been made by DoD itself.
From the Fleet Cyber Command perspective, we too are adopting and implementing the Zero Trust operating model with endpoint security. But I agree, I think we've reached a point now where we need to start looking at data differently, looking at the anomalous activity differently, and we need innovative solutions in that space. And I think we would welcome, those creative solutions.
Well, thank you all. Just as we close here, before they come up and give us the hook, I just want to say thank you to this panel. This is the first time we've done this. I appreciate it. It's just an honor to have you all up here, and I appreciate what each of you are doing for our Department of Defense, but for our country. This is a dynamic, rapidly moving, growing environment that you all are managing and leading. And I couldn't think of a better group to work through this. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your candid and open discussion on these challenging topics. And we look forward to hearing more from you in the near future.
Let's welcome Colonel Mike Black back to the stage to officially give them the hook.
Well, it seems like you guys are all ready to go. We have lunch next. Thanks to this panel for the following the theme of our urgency of action and being focused, aligned, and ready. Our next session is the lunch. That's in Hall D. You can find